Working with wood and wooden boats can be contemplative and even healing. Wood moves in response to its environment. It moves differently depending on the type of wood and the direction of the grain. We do well when we try to understand the way wood behaves and go about our work in a way that's sympathetic to the unique nature of wood, rather than wrestle it into submission with epoxy. There is one thing that we can all agree upon. In the battle against shrinkage and expansion, the wood always wins. Just to sit in the cabin can generate a smile that comes from my innermost being. I experience an upwelling of gratefulness as I take in the aromatic resins, the mellow musical tones, and the rich and timeless patterns in the wood. Like all of us, I'm always trying to keep most of the water on the outside of the hull, but I realise that if I try to keep all of it out, I'll fail. So in saying this, victory over the quirky personalities of wood is always going to be a compromise. And when the work's done, there'll be time to rest and contemplate the ice-sweet lines that we've created. A unique combination of form and function has slowly and painstakingly unfolded to reveal something very beautiful to behold. The story is as familiar as time itself. The creator toiling hard at his work, and when it is finished, we echo that deep sigh from within and agree, it is good. As I'm getting closer to starting this restoration project in earnest, I'm going to take a look in this video at the different aspects of the finishes and the condition of the timber, and just have a general chat about how I propose to go about doing things. A once in a lifetime opportunity to get hold of a bit of Tasmanian history. She's 18 feet 2 inches long, and she's built from King Billy pine over Huon pine. Interestingly, below the waterline she's in very good condition. There's a few little seams starting to open up, but you expect that of a timber boat that's been sitting out of the water, and it's nothing that can't be fixed with a little bit of sealant in there. And I'll probably use a very high stretch and high compression sealant, polyurethane sealant, and had a lot of success with that. Repairing Moonlight got it to a stage where she didn't leak at all. Ideally, you'd keep these boats in the water more, and then it wouldn't be an issue. But if they are out of the water, then the practical reality is that they're going to be sitting on a trailer under cover for long periods of time. So I wanted a system that meant that I could put them in the water and maybe they'd just leak a little bit and take up pretty quickly. But I don't want to have to be sitting them in the water for a week for the water to take up before I can use them. So polyurethane adhesive or polyurethane sealant is the solution for that problem. And I've done that on a clinker, and I'm sure this little Carvel boat will be the same. She used to be powered by a simplex petrol motor. Goodness only knows why more of these things didn't get blown up with gasoline fumes sitting in the bilge, but she managed to survive that. The simplex rusted out, and the young guy that I bought the boat from had acquired a Volvo single lung 8 horsepower, I think it is, diesel. So that's what I'll be fitting in there, and maybe sometime down the track I might even think about electric. Many perforations of the transom over the years, and I'm fortunate enough to have a bit of Huon pine from an old bed that my wife graciously donated to me, and so I'm able to cut Huon pine plugs to fill all these holes, because the way in which the new motor is going to be plumbed will be completely different. It used to have a boarding ladder sitting here and a name plate. I'll probably get a new name plate because I've renamed her, and remove the exhaust and the breather line from the transom. I'm still going to paint it because I just like the look of it the way she was. I made a bit of a start on the cabin sides and stripped back the old polyurethane off the king belly cabin sides, and some of the portholes had already been removed, and so I ended up taking a lot of them out. A little bit of staining around here, but not too much. Last 12 years just sitting in a shed under cover, and prior to that only occasional use, so it hasn't had a lot of exposure to the weather. So I've been doing up the portholes and thinking about how I'm going to re-seal those, and I'm going to use a polyurethane sealant. Got some ideas about that, but she's come up really well, and I can't wait to get back onto it to get those portholes back in there. The deck beams are Hume pine and then king belly pine lining over the top of that, and then canvas, painted canvas, which is in very good condition, well glued down onto the king belly, and for the most part that hasn't leaked at all. There's a little bit of dark staining over in this section here, so I'll have to investigate that a bit further, but I don't think there's anything of any real consequence there. And so I'm a bit of a fan of 2-pack polyurethanes as something which is highly UV resistant, extremely tough finish, and you know, they use it on bridge works and exposure to extreme environments, and I've had a lot of success with it on different boats that I've been working on. So I just did a little sample patch here, which didn't even prep it. I just went straight over the top of the old terps based enamel that's been used there, and it didn't react in any way, hasn't fried it. And I wanted to see just how it would go, but I'm pretty sure that I can just clean that back, and then I'm thinking about putting a 2-pack epoxy primer over the top of that, and then the 2-pack polyurethane, which will be pretty well bulletproof. As you can see, one of the seams has opened up on the side, and that's totally expected because she's glued from the garboard right up to the bullocks, and here we've got a little bit of opening up, so we're in a very, very dry part of the season at the moment. I wanted to see how she goes. She's sitting under a shade cloth, and I've had tarps on her, so there's been no water getting inside at all. And I just played around here with a bit of polyurethane. So just got to come up with the right system. I don't want to route those joints out and spline them, because it's showing me where it needs to move. So there's got to be some relief over that 2 metre expanse all the way down from the keel up to the gunnels, and it's got to let go somewhere. So this is where it's chosen to do it, and I'm not going to fight it. I'm going to work with it. So here's an interesting little bit of legacy. So the cabin sides let go then on a seam, so you've got grain running in this direction constraining the movement of these boards, which are running across the tangential surface of the timber, and of course that let go, and there was a crack along here, so someone's run a 6mm route a bit along there, which is a bit unfortunate, and then filled it up with some kind of bog, which is a reasonable sort of a match. But I'm going to take that out. I've got a little tiny bit of king billy, almost unprocurable now, and I'm going to route that filler out and spline that with a nice piece of old king billy pine. So you can see where the canvas is glued to the deck. There's no movement whatsoever, no drummy spots, so it's been glued very well. I'm not sure what sort of adhesive would have been used there, but you can see the terps based enamel has deteriorated quite a bit, so I'm going to have to sand that back. There's a bit of a non-slip surface in there as well, but I have tried in a few little spots there. You can see it sands back quite well. I'm not going to try and get it perfectly flat because it just won't happen. But that's going to, once I remove anything that's a little bit flaky There might be a few little spots, not very much. And then again, it's going to need a little bit of a filler over that, so I'll sort of lean on a bit of fiberglassing experience, really. We just don't want any moisture getting in under there at all. So, so send that back. You see here, one stage it's, I think that's the primer. So it would have had red lead and then primer and then terps based paint. So the primer to terps based paint has let go a little bit. Sand that back, get it as flat as I can, and then I'll spread it with a flexible epoxy, perhaps G-Flex. The epoxy will enable me to fair the surface, and then again I'm going to prime it with a 2-pack epoxy primer, so the industrial primer, and then the 2-pack polyurethane over the top with a bit of silica grit in it to give us the non-slip that we want. So over the plywood it's a little bit different there. See the plywood's let go there a little bit, but I think if I rake that out and fill that with epoxy, we can recover from that little bit there. Most of it's pretty good. And I know there is a little spot just over here where there was some ingress of moisture into the deck, so we need to explore that a little bit further. A little bit of deterioration here, which needs to be fixed. I think I'll remove the canvas from this section here and probably do something, you see that? Probably do something with a little bit of fiberglass cloth there and some epoxy, flexible epoxy. It's held up pretty well considering it's canvas, so with the treatment that I'm going to give it with the glass fibre and epoxy, it's going to outlast the original. I expect to have her on the water a lot more than she was before. All the hardware on the deck, or pretty much all of it, was handmade, hand fabricated from stainless steel, and it's looking really good, but there's a few dodgy looking little bits like this one. That track there, I'm not sure. I think I might remove that, come up with something that's a little bit more consistent with the period of the design. I hope you've enjoyed this video. It's nice to have you along for the journey. I'm always intrigued that many of the people that watch the videos don't subscribe, and I just want to work out what's the key to getting people to click on that button. I'd love you to do that so we can grow the channel together. See you next time.